Jared here from the Heel to the Face podcast. It is Mother's Day, the day after WWE Backlash. And before we do this quick WWE Backlash 2025 review, we just want to say a condolences out to the family of Sabu. Just found out moments ago that the ECW hardcore legend Sabu, who just had his quote-unquote retirement match less than 4 weeks ago, the night before WrestleMania, Joey Janela's spring break in Las Vegas, well, he has passed away today at the age of 60. He did have a chance to wrestle on the greatest stage of them all. Speaking of WrestleMania, at WrestleMania 23, I was lucky to be there. It was the ECW Originals versus the New Breed. Obviously, he was involved in some of the ECW One Night Stands, and more importantly, obviously involved in ECW as a whole from both the Rebirth to the Original. He's the most homicidal, genocidal wrestler, suicidal as well, don't forget that one, in the professional wrestling world, and he has passed away. I don't know if there was any reason behind it, if he was suffering from any kind of illnesses. Like I said, this is all just brand new news, but Sabu has passed away at the age of 60, and it's very reminiscent of, the Ultimate Warrior situation, where Ultimate Warrior was there WrestleMania weekend, kind of put a cap on his career, and then the next day, Ultimate Warrior was gone. This is a 4-week difference for Sabu, who has his retirement match. And his match was very Sabu-like in Las Vegas. You know what I mean? Barbed wire, glass tables, all the whole 9 yards of an ECW hardcore death-style match. So we put up with that 4 weeks ago, and here he is passing away here on Mother's Day. But this video is a WWE Backlash review, just a quick review. Not going to go into it, as in a full, lengthy detail here, But that's the good news is, speaking of lengthy detail, this might, in my eyes, be one of the most rewatched WWE pay-per-views of the last decade. And when I mean rewatch, I don't mean like you're going to click on YouTube and watch a clip of a match here or there, or go back and watch a match here or there, but watch it from start to finish. And the reason I say that is because it's one of the shortest WWE PLE pay-per-views in recent memory. Just about 2 hours and 40 minutes for the entire show. Takes you back to the 90s and the early 2000s when a pay-per-view would start at 8 Eastern. It would end at about 10:45 Eastern time. WrestleManias and Royal Rumbles included. And that was the length. That's what we got used to. WrestleMania 11, 12, 13, 14. They were all those length. And now obviously they're not anywhere near that. Even pay-per-views like the Royal Rumble, which only may have 4 matches on it, still runs a runtime of around 4 hours long. Even each night of WrestleMania was closer to like 3 hours and 45 minutes. So a 2 hour and 40 minute PLE. And personally, that's why I say it's rewatchable, right? Not because it was the greatest, but because it has that time. And I personally love it, right? I am a big proponent of less is more in a lot of situations. Don't just throw stuff out to throw stuff out. They put on a pay-per-view where there was only 5 matches on the card. None of the matches were lengthy in the terms of Iron Man or Elimination Chamber or Royal Rumble or War Games or anything like that. So I was, just as curious as the rest of you. 5 regular matches. Some of these matches may not even be that long. How is this pay-per-view going to go 3-4 hours long? Well, it didn't. It went 2 hours and 40 minutes. It served its purpose. It served its time. And I enjoy it for that. I also will say it was unique for the fact that this was the first PLE this year that wasn't in a stadium. The Royal Rumble was at Lucas Oil Field, Elimination Chamber was at Rogers Center in Toronto, and WrestleMania obviously in Las Vegas. So this was the first pay-per-view PLE that was just in a traditional arena with a traditional setup. It's the first one since Survivor Series of last year that was in Vancouver. So just a crowd of around 17 to 20,000 people, a sellout as they announced, and they didn't have to curtain off any seats or anything like that. But I will say, I understand, Triple H, quote unquote, the purpose of fit more people into the arena. I get it. I understand. But I will say, in terms of ways that they can fit people into the arena while having a unique setup, this was probably the laziest. It was the SmackDown Monday Night Raw stage, which we're all used to seeing. Just obviously those have the curtain behind it to block off seats. This obviously sold those seats, so it did have the curtain, but we've seen before with like Money in the Bank in London, or obviously the Bad Bunny Damian Priest match from Backlash 2023 has been getting a lot of play lately. That kind of tunnel setup right there, what we're used to like at Madison Square Garden in the 90s and 2000s, where they used to have the small tunnelway, WrestleMania 10, for example. Go back and watch that. That kind of setup, I think, is unique. And there's ways to sell out the whole arena while having a unique stage. Now, I'm not expecting the claws and the hooks looks from the early Backlash sets. I would love to see those, but I do understand, right? They're trying to sell out the whole place. More power to them in that way, so I'm not going to fault them for that. But I will say, there is still a way you can scale down the set just in a more unique way, right? It can be small, just like it is for Raw and SmackDown, but it can just be different. It can look different. It can feel different. I remember back in, like the 90s and the early 2000s, there were some pay-per-view stages that weren't lavish, weren't crazy, that were just regular, look kind of like a house show set. I'm thinking about like a Backlash 1999, which just had like kind of a mesh entranceway and like a little screen above it. Over the Edge in 1999, I think, had a similar setup. But the difference was in those setup is that they looked different from Monday Night Raw, right? They weren't grand, but the idea that they just looked different. And because this is a PLE, this isn't your typical weekly TV show, you just wanted to look different, right? You want it to feel different. So I think they could have done something a little different when in homage, I guess, to Saturday Night's Main Event, right? Who does the same thing. And Saturday Night's Main Event, to be honest with you, feels a lot like this, right? Where it's a Saturday night, under 3 hours, not in a stadium, only one championship on the line. So this pay-per-view PLE really did have that Saturday night's main event feel. And now the pay-per-views are on Saturday nights as well. It's really like hard to tell the difference of what would be a bigger event. Saturday night's main event coming up in Tampa in just about 2 weeks, or Backlash, which is going to have more cachet to it in that much-watched sense, because they're both about the same length of time. They come out at the same time of night, right, on a Saturday night in late spring, early summer. And I would say Saturday's main event's on NBC, so it might have more eyeballs in that regard of having more of the Americanized, notoriety of being on national television versus on Peacock and Netflix exclusively. But these ones that aren't in stadiums, right? I mean, let's be real. Elimination Chamber and Backlash on the surface are both B-level pay-per-views. They're not one of the big four. They're not SummerSlam or WrestleMania or Royal Rumble, right? But looking back at it, right? Look at Elimination Chamber, look at Backlash. They really had a very different feel to them. Elimination Chamber this year felt huge. And Backlash felt like Payback or Fastlane from a few years ago kind of thing. So it is really crazy how like a stadium and just that kind of thing can make things feel differently. Now, there was no championships on the line in Elimination Chamber. Not one. Not Intercontinental, not women's, not any. But it just, I don't know what it is, but obviously the John Cena heel turn and The Rock's appearance at it made it feel big as well. But it felt, the Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania, it all felt really, really big. Felt really different from Monday Night Raw every single week, felt different from Saturday Night's Main Event. But this kind of went back into feeling just like those, in the sense of the overall presentation of it. And maybe Pat McAfee not being on commentary during the show might have something to do with it. But the show itself, overall, was a decent show. The first match was for the Intercontinental Championship. It was a match in which Jacob Fatu retained. How we got there was it ended up being Jacob Fatu and LA Knight in the ring by themselves at the end. Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest kind of went into business for themselves, where they went into the outside. They ended up doing one of those cool spots out by the crowd where Damian Priest kind of did one of those like choke slams of Drew McIntyre through a table out through the crowd, puts them both out. So it puts the focus just on LA Knight and Jacob Fatu in the ring. And we saw the debut of a Jeff Cobb. Now, Michael Cole said he's one of the hottest free agents in the world of professional wrestling, and I think that's just WWE speak, because there's probably a lot of free agents who are very hot in the world of WWE, and someday it'll be MJF, right? It'll be Adam Cole. It'll be Kenny Omega. Jeff Cobb, not to say any disrespect to him, but he is from Ring of Honor fame. He's from New Japan fame, and I use the word fame kind of lightly there. It took a minute for me to even recognize him and remember him. I'm more of a Jeff Cobb namesake only kind of person. But I don't want to say that he's AJ Styles coming in, right? I don't want to say that he's coming over to WWE like Cody Rhodes after his AEW run, or CM Punk or anything like that. And it appears that he's going to join, I guess, up with Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa came out to help Jacob Fatu, and then it was Jeff Cobb who joined that group as well to help Jacob Fatu get the win over LA Knight. But I don't want to say he's joining the bloodline, because he not really of Samoan descent here. So it appears that Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu and maybe even Tama Tonga and all those guys might be creating some sort of new faction, but I don't believe it's going to be the bloodline, or in a different sense, because of Jeff Cobb not really, we're kind of getting out of that Samoan descent. I don't know how they're going to tie it in, because he does kind of, look Samoan in that sense, but I don't think he has any heritage ties to that. So I think this is the start of maybe just Solo Sikoa being the leader of a faction and a group on his own that is different than the Bloodline. We'll see where they take this, but Jacob Fatu retains the championship. Second match of the night was the second longest match of the night. So good to our co-host Brandon Clements for being able to identify that. But Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria, they had a great showing. And I've heard a lot of people talk, and I'll agree with them. WWE right now having a hard time with heels, right? Because both Becky Lynch and John Cena are heels, but at the same time, they're such big names and they're such likable characters that they're not true heels in the sense of, I would even say like Dominic Mysterio from a couple years ago, where he was just booed out of the building and people love to boo Dominic Mysterio. That's not the case with Becky Lynch. That's not the case with John Cena. But Becky Lynch, she's doing great as a heel. She's doing her best as a heel. And it was an overall great technical match. There was a spot near the end where Becky Lynch blocked the Nightwing from Lyra Valkyria, which looked like it might have broken Lyra Valkyria's nose. But the back and forth went, and it looked like Becky Lynch was going to be able to get the pinfall, but a quick reversal at the end of an 18-minute match sees Lyra Valkyria kind of get the pinfall, where Becky Lynch was kind of dumbfounded, right? It wasn't one of those clear, decisive Nightwing 1, 2, 3 kind of pinfalls. It was kind of the Becky Lynch blocks the Nightwing, tries to get the pinfall herself. They do the quick reversal, quick 1, 2, 3. Lyra Valkyria tries to get out of there. Becky Lynch gets right back up, attacks Lyra Valkyria, who looks like she was blocking her nose after it might have been broken, and it was one of those, everybody from the back's going to come and break things up. So we might not be done with Lyra Valkyria and Becky Lynch in a little bit of a rivalry going on right now as we move on to match number 3 of the night, which was for the Intercontinental Championship, Dominic Mysterio and Penta. You got to give it up to Dom, right? It's not just a character, but his in-ring skills are great. And he's not obviously the size of a traditional luchador, right? He's a lot taller than that, but he can hang it up and work with the best of them. He's in there with Penta, putting on a great match. He does look a little bit different in his styles in some aspects because, well, he is not like 5'2" like his dad, right? He is a much taller person, but he's always in there with the luchadors because of his heritage and everything like that. Being a Mysterio, puts on a great match. They go back and forth, but obviously the catalyst at the end of the match was El Grande Americano coming in to interfere when the ref wasn't looking. Does like a little like headbutt on Penta when he's up at the top rope to try to do a top rope assault on Dominic Mysterio. And then Dominic Mysterio ends up being able to do a 5-star frog splash on the now, disabled, I guess you'd say, Penta, who was just attacked by El Grande Americano. 5-star frog splash, 1, 2, 3. Dominic Mysterio retains his championship in a match that went about 13 minutes long. The shortest match of the night was the, I guess you'd say, semi-main event in this term because it's the penultimate match of the evening. But Gunther and Pat McAfee. Actually, the shortest match tonight, let me reverse that. The shortest match tonight was the Penta versus Dominic Mysterio match. That was only 9 minutes long. The Gunther-Pat McAfee match, which many would have thought would have been the shortest match of the night, goes 14 minutes long because there was a lot of back and forth of time wasting, right? It was one of those where like Gunther could win the match, but chose a lot of times to not win the match. Michael Cole was very invested in the match, screaming at Gunther the whole time to just do the pinfall, get the pin. Pat McAfee just tap out, let this be over, yada, yada, yada. It was one of those, a lot more posturing than there was wrestling, a lot of just Gunther taking it into Pat McAfee and then just deciding not to do the pinfall. And then even so, when you would think maybe, okay, they're going to do the pinfall now, then Pat McAfee would mount some offense. So Pat McAfee would mount some offense to kind of make it so that it was a little more dragged out in the end. So it was all Gunther. Michael Cole's just saying, Pat McAfee, just enough. And then Pat McAfee would have some offense, and then Gunther would go right back on the attack, and then Michael Cole would be right back there. That's enough. He tried getting involved. He gets dragged into the ring. He almost gets attacked by Gunther essentially before Pat McAfee, gets involved, and then Pat McAfee, like I said, mounts a little bit more offense. It never really looked anywhere in the match that Pat McAfee was going to be able to win this match, but he did mount some offense at a few different times before Gunther gets the win. Gunther with a show of respect, sort of, not necessarily a handshake, but kind of a salute to Pat McAfee as the match ended, gets the win like you'd expect him to get the win. It was by knockout, right? As the referee called for the bell. It wasn't a traditional pinfall. The referee called for the bell. It would appear that Pat McAfee was knocked out, and Gunther gets the win over Pat McAfee. As we move to the main event, John Cena and Randy Orton. A great main event overall. It went about 20-ish minutes, 25 minutes-ish in this main event match. A lot of back and forth, but mostly a lot of Randy Orton. Randy Orton on the night just, he had most of the offense. But I want to say one of the moves, they even had to slow motion replay this move. That was something that you wouldn't have caught it with the naked eye, right? It was just so smooth, so quick. But there was an FU by John Cena, right? The fireman's carry that he does for his, his finishing move. But he was in the middle of an FU, and as he got Randy Orton over his shoulders, Randy Orton switched it into an RKO. So it was literally like simultaneously as you're doing the fireman's carry over the shoulder for Randy Orton. He then kind of turns his head, grabs his arm, RKO. So it was just completely smooth by both people. It was so smooth, you were kind of confused. You're like, okay, why is John Cena knocked out here? I don't even understand. That's how smooth it was. They had to kind of slow motion replay it. I thought it was the awesomest move of the night. So an attitude adjustment, FU turned into a RKO simultaneously. Both men were knocked out. Obviously, there was a couple spots where the referee was knocked out. Randy Orton got the pinfall without the referee. Many different occasions. There were some times where even some people from the back came out. Because, things started to get out of control because Randy Orton was so mad at the referee that he attacks the referee. So then, Nick Aldis comes out. Nick Aldis gets an RKO. All the producers, some of them like Daivari gets an RKO. I didn't recognize all the producers that were out there, but RKO for everybody in that. Another referee comes out. He gets knocked out. The match continues. At the end, it looked like Randy Orton was trying to prime up for the win, and he was going to punt John Cena when out of nowhere, R-Truth comes out. R-Truth comes out, tries to talk some sense into Randy Orton, like, hey, that's John Cena. We love John Cena. Everyone loves John Cena. Me specifically. I love John Cena, right? And that makes it so he doesn't get the punt, right? So it stalls R-Truth and Randy Orton. Randy Orton says, R-Truth, you got to go. I'm sorry. So out goes R-Truth with an RKO. And then when he's distracted, John Cena with the low blow, right? And then he's able to hit Randy Orton with the belt when the referee isn't looking. He gets the pin. 1, 2, 3. John Cena retains the championship with obviously the tomfoolery going on at the end. So John Cena, as the heel, gets the win in the heel fashion. Josh Peck, who is from Nickelodeon's Drake and Josh fame, he recently said about these press conferences after the shows are over, they're kind of silly, they're kind of ridiculous. You know what I mean? They don't really understand the purpose. But after Backlash, there might have been a purpose for the post show, because John Cena, while he was doing his stuff, talking as champion, R-Truth comes out, and R-Truth talks about that he's happy that John Cena wins, but at the same time, not too happy that he did it as a heel, but he still respects John Cena. But John Cena, staying in heel fashion, says, R-Truth, that's enough out of you. Any more out of you, and there's gonna be repercussions, as I guess he said. And R-Truth, what he just said was like, got it, okay. But hey, got it is another word, right? Or I don't remember exactly offhand, but he just said something like, I can't believe, okay. You know what I mean? Like just something just to acknowledge that John Cena's not happy. But John Cena took that as that's enough, and attitude adjusted him right through the press conference table. So the first time in any of these press conferences, we have kind of seen, story bleed over into real life, I guess, because these press conferences are very vanilla. They're very ask questions from the media. It's not like Smack Talk was back in the day, right? But in this sense, it was, right? We got John Cena with the fireman's carry finishing move on R-Truth through the press conference table, which appears like it's going to set up an R-Truth John Cena match at Saturday night's main event. But that's down the line, and I think the idea of maybe doing this at the press conference was the idea that maybe John Cena isn't going to be showing up on Raw and SmackDown between now and Saturday night's main event. So that's essentially how we do all of this in one night to kind of push the storyline going forward without needing him to come on Raw or anything to do so. But Backlash, an overall okay pay-per-view, like I said, didn't have that feel of any of the previous pay-per-views so far this year. But hey, it's in the books. And Backlash, It does. It's kind of one of those weird ones every single year because it is the post-WrestleMania first show. And it kind of... It's like when you go see a concert and they start off with hit after hit after hit, and then there's the part of the show where they kind of scale back, they kind of dial back a little bit. They maybe do a ballad, they slow the things down before speeding it back up to finish out the show. And I think Backlash is a good example of that, right? It's right after WrestleMania, the high of like the Rumble and Mania and all the build up to it. And then we got to scale things back just a little bit as we then start to move the wheels faster going towards SummerSlam. But this week on our show, the Heel to the Face podcast, on a brand new episode, we will discuss all of this in full with Brandon Clements. And as we are now on the road to Saturday night's main event, which could maybe feel bigger than this show. This has been a quick Backlash review.